Hey there, welcome to the Empowerment Equation podcast. I'm Rowan Embry.
And I'm Lyra Vanguard.
On this podcast, we'll have insightful conversations that can empower all of us as we tap into our inner wisdom and connect with our higher selves.
We've got some awesome guests lined up who will share their stories about moments that really help to awaken and empower them. And we're sure their stories will empower you as well. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Hi, welcome to the Empowerment Equation. It's been a while since we have given you an update about where we are in the world and what we're doing. And so that's what this episode is about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time.
Yeah, and you probably noticed the title, Merry Christmas, You're Triggered, and we had update information prior to that, but Christmas was a time that brought up a lot of things that I think we both didn't know were still there to work on.
Yeah, very unexpected things that just came out of nowhere. Yeah, hence the title, Merry Christmas, You're Triggered, because we have that, our original episode was Merry Christmas, You're Fired. And we've come a long way since then. And a lot has, transpired and a lot has evolved and we've manifested a lot for ourselves. And yeah, we've been wanting to get this update for months. But
that's right.
Yeah, but it just kept unfolding. And we just felt like, okay, well, let's wait for this thing to unfold and see how that works out. Oh, and then one more thing to unfold. So anyway, we're going to catch you guys up to date on all those magical unfoldings and then what led up to the massive trigger. Well, I wouldn't say it's massive triggering. The triggering kind of like brought everything to a head. I realized like that just that there's that last little bit of like, here's some unsettled things that need to be dealt with. It was a gift.
Yes.
It was a Christmas gift. Not one we wanted, but it was a gift.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you wanted it because, what you all maybe not know is that Lyra gets very giddy at the idea of having challenges, emotional and otherwise, because she sees them as, things that she can work on and overcome. And maybe you can explain it better, but I always feel like, oh, it's another thing to work on.
I know. And when I see it, I'm like, oh, great. We're all triggered. We're pissed off. We can grow.
And I'm like, I don't want to feel my feelings, but I know I have to get to the other side of this.
Right. Yeah. But that's what we got to all do is just like, I'm not saying we have to be giddy over every challenge. And we obviously feel your emotions and like, oh, this is challenging. And you have to ask the questions, why is this happening? But if you can get to the point sooner than later, why is this happening for me instead of why is this happening to me? Then that's where the silver lining is. That's where the growth is. And that is what excites me.
And honestly, that question, why is this happening for me, is what helped me come to a place on Christmas Eve where we could talk it out and I didn't feel like you were ruining my holiday.
After much admitted tears, alone time.
I cried all night before. Yeah. Then I was like, wait, this is not even about her. This is about me.
So let's back up a bit for our listeners. So as you know, Rowan made the very heroic move to come be with me so we could continue to do this in person and grow together side by side instead of in a long distance situation. So we're together now, but that all, and it was quite magical. It just like everything kind of fell into place. So we'll talk about all those things that happened. But yeah, so I thought we were humming along nicely. And then Christmas happened, and she was telling me things about how she traditionally did it at home. And I thought we were just swapping stories. And I go, oh, well, my story is exactly opposite to that. So we do it on a Christmas day. And she was going on about how it's Christmas Eve is the most special day. I didn't take the hint. I didn't think that meant like, okay, we're doing Christmas on Christmas Eve. So I was listening, but I just, was in my own train of thought. And she was in her own train of thought. And I guess we just didn't communicate clearly about what our expectations was. And that's on Christmas Eve day is kind of when everything came to a head because I was still shopping and preparing and everybody was out doing their Christmas Eve bustle. And I think you were just like, when are you guys going to be ready?
Yeah, it started the day before. the day before Christmas Eve because for a long time I had kind of been working at night, and I got up really early this Saturday after working late and went to a market specifically to find a lady who made tamales because that's a Christmas Eve tradition in my family. And I thought explained how important the, buffet of snacks and tamales were on Christmas Eve. And so in my mind, you were like, okay, cool, let's do that. But then I found out the day before Christmas Eve, we weren't going to do any of that. We were going to just have a cookout on Christmas Day. And, your daughter wasn't even going to be here on Christmas Eve. And that the Christmas Day was when all the food and presents would happen. And I was just like, what the fuck? And I just cried all night. I was very upset. I was just like, it doesn't feel like Christmas at all. Everything is ruined. This is not what I had planned for the holiday. And I was like, we didn't even talk about this. I was just like, what happened to the democracy in this household? Why does she get to decide when Christmas happens? Then I was like, wait. This is the wrong frame of mind. What is this? Like, why am I so upset? Why am I in tears about this? Like, it shouldn't hit me this hard. We're all together. We're all going to eat. We're all going to open presents. Why does it matter about the timing? Mm-hmm. And so I dug really deep and I got in there and figured out that, of course, like everything, went back to my childhood. And in my human design, I have the trauma wound or whatever you call it of rejection. And the way that plays out in my adult life is generally that I reject others when they cross me, but I'm working on that. And I said, but the rejection wound was triggered in a different way in my childhood. It was about never being listened to and always feeling like what I wanted didn't matter. Mm. And I realized that is what was happening now as an adult. It took me right back to being little me, and I felt not like what I wanted wasn't important, and that I wasn't listened to. And then I felt on top of that I was being forced to have like my mother's Christmas all over again. And that was very much like one present on Christmas Eve and everything else is done on Christmas Day. And I was just inside, little me was kicking and screaming and fighting against that. She didn't want to go back to that place. And then once I realized that, I calmed down about it and it truly came to a place where it was like, I don't care how we celebrate just so we're together because I love everyone. And I want this to be our good first holiday, this amazing first Christmas in this beautiful place and our house that we love. And then I didn't have an opportunity to talk to Lyra about it when I came to that conclusion. But like she said, everybody was doing the last minute hustle and bustle. And I was out buying last minute something for my kiddo. And we ran into each other at the mall. And, there are no coincidences. Because I had gone back upstairs because I'd forgotten something. And that was when she saw me across the way. And we chatted in the crowded mall. Yeah. And I was in tears in the mall. But it was a vulnerable moment and hard for me to have in public. But I did it. And I'm really proud of myself because that was like a huge growth moment for me, because I will say that in the past, I haven't looked at things from that perspective. About like, why is this happening for me? And that this situation is about me. It's not about the other person, not something this big. And yeah, I just felt like a lot of growth came out of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, when I saw how upset she was, like, it's like, oh, it triggered something in me because it was like, okay, this is her first time away from everybody. I'm the only family she has. We're the only family she has right now, and she's used to this tradition. So we just wrapped up our shopping and we ended up doing it that night, and it ended up being great. So it was fantastic. And I didn't even realize that I was all that was going on behind the scenes that I had triggered so much. I was just like, okay, well, I try to rationalize with you. I'm like, but we're in a different time zone. Therefore, it's still the same. It's actually Christmas Eve back where we're from. And she's like, but we're not there. It's this timeline or nothing. So,
yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. And I didn't want everyone to rearrange. I mean, if I was out of 5 people, the only one who was determined to do Christmas Eve, I didn't want to make everyone do it on the one day just for me, right? I'm not that selfish. I was like, if everyone wants to do it Christmas Day, let's do it Christmas Day. Like, don't feel obligated to change all the plans just because I am upset. Like, that's not what I wanted the outcome to be.
Oh no, and that's not what happened. Everything shook out perfectly. But yeah, it's those opportunities that we have for growth. And that's why they're so exciting. Yes, they're painful in a moment, but when you get to the other end of it, because we got so much closer even after that. And like this, now we're in January, and I feel so much more. I worked on a lot of things my body-wise. We've been reading this wonderful book called The Secret Language of Your Body. And so now I kind of use it. We keep it as almost like a coffee table book. Like it's like a go-to Bible. So anytime I have any kind of pain, I know instinctually that it's like attached to an emotion, because I bottle things up so much that it usually ends up in like a hurt ankle or stuffy sinuses or a pulsing headache. So I'll run to this book and be like, see what's going on. And I tell you, yeah, it's so accurate every single time. It's like, oh, I am feeling resentful right now. That's why I have stiffness in my neck. I'm being inflexible. So I highly recommend that book to our readers, because if you can tie in all the kind of things, because our bodies usually give us clues before even our emotions well up to the surface, if we were truly honest. But we're so used to just disregarding the pain and like take an Advil, put some ice on it, go to bed early, that, it's our physical bodies screaming to us that, hey, there's some unresolved emotions here, and they always have a correlation to certain parts of the body, even injuries, even cutting yourself or stubbing your toe. Every time, even when I've injured myself, I've looked up and it's definitely had a direct correlation to whatever was going on with me mentally at that time.
Well, and there's another thing I think that came out of the growth and the closeness that came after. I mean, since you have been realizing your body signs more often, now when you're triggered by me specifically, you are able to tell me about it, and we can have a conversation about what the trigger was and what that means within you and the physical things that you're feeling due to the triggering. And so I feel like that's a very healthy way to work through it as well, instead of you just remaining triggered and not telling me and just kind of internalizing that stuff, which may have been what would have happened in the past.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And it feels, now that I know I'm getting these signals, like you said, this is the most safe I've felt. And you messaged me that the other day. It's the most safe we've ever felt, really working through the shadow work openly with other people. Right. And that's important, because since we all are mirrors anyway, it's important to work through it together,
Yeah, I think in the past we were probably worried that the people who were triggering us, who were being our mirrors, might turn against us if we, talked through it or tried to work through what the issue was. In my case, for really big stuff, I would just walk away from relationships. Now, that's mostly with men, though, because, there was a time perhaps when she triggered me in the beginning of our friendship, and she wanted to walk away because she did not feel like she could meet my expectations, and I was displeased, and I wouldn't let her walk away. I was like, but we have to keep being friends. Like, I can be upset with you and still be friends. Like, we can work this out. And so that is still happening today, but on a greater scale, because now we're able to talk openly about it instead of sugarcoating things and keeping all the niceties in place. Like, yeah.
And it's really helpful for me to talk to you now, because I can honestly say in all earnestly that it's not you, it's me. I know I'm willing to take full accountability for whatever you've done, quote unquote, that's triggered me. I know that it's actually nothing you've done. It's just something that's been triggered in me because it's a trauma inside of me that needs to be resolved. So instead of being angry at you for saying something a certain way or whatever it is that's triggered me, I can be grateful. I can be like, oh, okay. Well, now something feels a little off inside. I'm getting a little angry. I'm getting a little heated. Why is that? And I can dig to the root of it. So it's about taking responsibility for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice I can tell you to your face. I mean, for those listeners who can't, whose triggering mirror people are not on the same path and not wanting to do the shadow work, we're very fortunate that we get to do it with each other because we have agreed that this is what we're doing together. But I know that that's not the luxury for everybody.
Right.
So, but I still would say, feel your emotions, but then get to a place, to where you can get to yourself and you can ask yourself truly why that person, instead of holding it against them or thinking they're always this way. They might always be that way, but why are they always that way with you in that particular way? Because there's something, and it's not to point out fault within yourself, because it's usually not fault. It usually is a deep wound that happened from childhood or maybe even a past life, honestly.
Mm-hmm. But you have to reveal it to heal it. You have to dig it out, get to the root of it, examine it, accept it. Accepting it is hard. To see those truths about what's buried inside you, and then you can integrate it and start.
And part of the integration is forgiveness. First, forgive the person who triggered you, because it's really not their fault. They were just being their mirror. They're just doing their job. Because all of us are, in fact, I'm going to write a book about that called Mirrors. All of us are just mirrors, So it's not the mirror's fault, but then it's also not your fault. You have to forgive yourself. And you have to forgive however that trauma came about, originally, if you can get to the bottom of it. You have to have grace for yourself and connect with your higher self. And that's how it can be alchemized. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's dropping of a lot of egos. It's a lot of, you have to get rid of any sense of blaming anybody outside of anything, and even blaming yourself. There's no blame to be had. It's just a thing. It's just been created within yourself, and you can dissolve it.
Right. I think you're right. The forgiving yourself is a really key part, because I didn't want to be so angry at you at Christmas, and I was mad at myself for being mad at you. And then I had to get past that and just be like, it just is. I am just angry because of this thing in my childhood that was reopened. And so then I was able to, yes, forgive myself for being mad and get over it, basically. Get past it, work through it.
Yeah. That's the thing. We just got to get more in the habit of showing ourselves way more grace than we have been programmed to do. That's the thing about taking responsibility. When we say like, oh, you're creating your reality and you have all this ability to manifest, you just got to take full responsibility for everything that's ever happened to you. And then you look back and you're like, all these shitty things happened. And it was my ex's fault, my boss's fault, my mother's fault. And, so it's hard to go back and like, oh, it wasn't any of their faults. But the thing is, it's not to say it was my fault, because there is no fault. That's the thing, right? It's like, how do you take responsibility without the shame? You shouldn't turn around and shame yourself or blame yourself or take the fault. That's not what we're asking people to do, is take the blame, right? We're just saying take the responsibility. You can have responsibility without blame or fault.
Right.
Because that's called taking your power back. To me, that's empowerment.
Right.
Because if it's nobody's fault, not even your own, but you have the power to alchemize and change things, then you're completely empowered. You're unstoppable.
Right. That's true. Like, I could have blamed it on companies or bosses when I was laid off 4 different times. But really, when I take responsibility, what I'm saying is my higher self didn't want me to have those corporate jobs because I was not on my soul's path, which is to integrate creativity into my work. That's not what those jobs were offering. So really, I made it so that I would lose them. And I'm taking responsibility for that.
Right. So see that's a great example of taking responsibility and thanking your higher self for having it happen the way it happened. I mean, the thing is, we're just awakening to the fact that we do have a higher self to consult. Because again, that's been very hidden. We've been told that either you're atheist and there's nobody here and it's all your responsibility and you're either smart or dumb and whatever happens is your fault, or that you have no blame and that there's a God and it's just not his will. And it's like, well, how do we get in contact with that God so I can figure out what his will is? But this new way of looking at it and being like, okay, God resides within me. I am connected to source. I am a spark of source. I have divine creation ability, therefore divine responsibility for my life and how it goes. It's,
Well, and that ties into, I feel like if it's not the divine will of your higher self, then you're not in flow and things are going to be challenging for you. Like me keeping corporate jobs, very challenging. But me deciding to come here, not as challenging. Like I think in our last episode, I said, you know what? I'm just going to take out of my savings and buy those plane tickets. I'm going to make it happen. And I wanted to sell my house and it wasn't selling, but guess what? That wasn't what my higher self wanted. And so as I was getting on that airplane, I was signing a lease agreement to have renters, rent my place. And leading up to the getting on the plane, I mean, there had been a hurricane near the airport where I was going to get on. There was power and water out everywhere. So getting to the airport itself was, an achievement because there were obstacles and long traffic lines. And people were lining up around corners just to get gas with cash. It was kind of crazy, and I had wished that I'd picked a different airport to fly out of, but I couldn't have known when I bought the tickets the hurricane was going to hit. So I just stuck with it. And then we got to the airport, and I was like, I am home free. And then I saw the line to get through security. It was literally hanging out of the airport, and people were lined up down the ramp into the garage. I've never seen that kind of a security line before. And I was like, okay, angels, higher self, Mama Gaia, whoever is listening, if I am supposed to be going on this plane, please get me there. And it miraculously, I was through that security line in 30 minutes. They weren't making people take laptops out of backpacks or take tennis shoes off. They were just running us through. And I got on that plane right as it started boarding because I had also been offered an upgrade where I could lie down the full trip. And I was like, someone wants me to go on this trip. I mean, it's all just lining up too perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's unheard of. I mean, times that I was 30 minutes prior to my plane leaving from California. I ended up having to rent a car and drive back to Texas because they were going to make me buy a whole new ticket. That's how stubborn they were being. And there was no hurricane. There was no nothing. They were just like, sorry. I'm like, but the plane's right there on the tarmac. They're like, you're late. so the fact that all of that just happened and plus you got an upgrade.
Yeah. The way was just paved. And then I got here and immediately was offered some work by someone who ended up disappearing from my life shortly after giving me some key advice about how to stay here. And so that turned out to be the advice to go back to college. And mind you, I have not once wanted to go back to school. I've done a lot of other kinds of courses and learning since I got my initial degree, but I never wanted a postgraduate degree because I didn't enjoy college the first time. And I felt like it would be a waste of my time and money to go back. And so I was very resistant to the idea of it. But then I thought, well, how bad do I want to stay here? And this does seem like the easiest path, and it's being put right in front of me. So here's how I know I was supposed to get a master's degree. I saw 2 universities. I only talked to 2 counselors, one at each university. I reviewed their programs, and I picked one of the 2. And I picked one program at the university, and I applied for only the one, and I got immediately accepted. And then I applied for my student visa, and that got immediately approved. And, I had also applied for one for my kiddo to stay here with me. And what I applied for, I don't think that she was exactly qualified for because of the nature of the kind of student visa I have. And as it turns out, they just sort of decided to make one up for her. It's not something I could have applied for online, but it just came out of nowhere. And we're here until I finish, in a year and a half. There's no reapplying for more student visas during that time, which, again, an advisor had told me doesn't happen. So I was like, all right, I got the hint. I'm going to go to school. I don't know where this is leading, but I'm going because I'm just in the flow. So I feel like being in the flow for me means having an idea about where I want to be, which was here in this country, but then letting everything else present itself to me along the way.
Mm-hmm. And that is the flow. That's what they say. I mean, all the manifesting coaches or whatever say, like, have a goal, right? And take opportunities as they come, but don't have a definite plan that you're like, by God, it has to go A, B, C, D to end goal. Because you don't know, because your higher self does have it worked out. You just forgot that you made those plans before you incarnated. So we feel a little bit lost down here, but if you can let go and just keep your eye on what you ultimately want and then let everything else fall into place,
that's right.
It's so much easier. You get made up visas. You get special visas just for you.
Yeah. It's not really your job to know how. Like, I didn't know how I was going to stay. I thought I was going to teach English as a second language, but that's not the how that worked out. The how was a master's degree I didn't think I wanted. So,
yes. And so there's going to be a future podcast on what that ended up being. You never know who you're going to meet when you're about to go. Next month, you'll start. So, yeah, you don't know what's going to unfold, who you'll meet, which paths will be crossed, what opportunities will come.
Yeah, well, and even opportunities job-wise have been kind of miraculous, too, because before I left, I told some of my friends, who had become who were in management positions now that I've worked with before. And I said to them, like, hey, you know what? I would really love to work for a company while I'm over there. I could just, because I wanted something flexible that I could do when I wanted to work. I don't want to be a clock puncher. I don't want to be in an office at a desk anymore, since that has not worked out for me. I lose those jobs. And I also wanted to do things that I think are fun and interesting, and I want to be endlessly entertained. And I know some people are like, that doesn't exist, but guess what? It does, because I feel like the perfect job came along here locally that I was offered, and it's flexible and it's fun, and there's so many interesting people I meet. They're full of stories, and I am endlessly entertained. It's one of the first times I've looked forward to going to work in a really long time, and I'm really enjoying being here. Life does not feel hard now because I have the support of everyone living here, and I feel like I'm supposed to be here. The universe wants me here, and I have fun stuff to do to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when you were looking, I was like, when you were looking at your jobs, you're like, I just want it to be fun and entertaining, and
yeah,
and the money's good as well.
And there was a listing right there for fun and entertaining, and I was like, what? I'm just gonna apply. And they called me immediately. I have no former experience doing this thing, but they saw my resume and they were like, cool, you can do this. And I started immediately. It's really cool.
No. So many things. Oh, and then let's so rewind to when you first got here. So when she first got here, I was in a situation where we didn't quite have enough room. So we were looking for a new house, and everything we applied for, it didn't matter. Like we had we had an application that had like all the credentials, and just nothing panned out. The agents, I would have to call them out like, oh yeah, we already rented it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, did you even look at my application? And so anyway, we ended up doing a temporary rental just so she could get here. It was like a week to week basis, just so we would all have enough space to be together, but it wasn't ideal. The person we were renting it from, it was on property too, which was a little annoying. So it wasn't truly our space. It was more of a flatting situation, if I'm just quite honest. So yeah, that worked out for a couple of months for you were here. You came in,
July.
2 months over there? Not even quite 2 months.
No, it was only a month because I got here in mid-July and we were in our new place we're in now by the end of August.
Yeah. So as soon as she gets here, we both agree, like, we're not completely thrilled with this flooding situation. We're happy to be together, but it's a little awkward and we want a new space. So then she begins looking, and it's crazy because here she is just recently landed, no real rental history here. Like all the things that
no credits. I didn't have a job here yet.
Yeah.
And I also had not acquired my student visa yet.
And when we were applying before, we had all that stuff. We had like jobs, credits, like history, the whole, and still couldn't even get anybody to look at our applications.
Right.
You come in with none of the required quote unquote credentials, fill out 2 applications, and get both houses.
Yeah.
Like we had to make a choice. It was crazy.
Yes. So that's true. But I think even the universe was helping us decide which house would be ours, because even though, yes, I was ultimately offered the 2 houses, the first agent was dragging his feet and continued to ask a bunch of questions. And I think it just paved the way for house number 2, the better house, the house we were supposed to be in, we walked right in, saw the agent, and we were offered it immediately and without further questions. No additional paperwork. It was just like, here, you can have this house, move in next week. And
I know. And it's been perfect. Since then, we've had a housewarming party. Everybody was just in awe. They were like, oh my God, your house is so amazing. It feels so cozy. And then we've had friends over who were just like, if I'm in the area, can I just call and come by and just be in your space? Because it's so inviting and welcoming. And that aura existed in the house. I mean, we've added to it, of course, but it was here before. The energy was just really good in the space.
Yes.
And the first minute. Yeah.
Yeah. When you walked in, I saw the archway and the entrance hallway, and I thought, this is the one. I don't even care about being offered the other one, because this is where we're supposed to be. And, in numerology, this particular house number is one of, peace and quiet and introspection and spirituality and expansion. And I would say that that's contributing to everything we're experiencing here. So I think that's why we're supposed to have this house.
I think so. The other house number was really interesting as well. It's not kidding, since we didn't give that. I'm going to give the story. So I'll tell the house number on that one. It was 88. And I was like, oh my God, that's a fabulous number. That's a money number. Turns out I did a little digging on the history of the house because it was a historic home. And a police report came up. And I was like, what happened here? Turns out somebody else thought that 88 was a very lucky number. And the previous tenants before the ones that we had chosen that one, we're running a gambling den. And they got busted by the cops.
And it was like, we almost moved into a former gambling den.
I think the energy here is way better than who knows? I mean, yeah. And the reason the police came in the first place is because somebody had actually brought weapons and held up one of the gambling events and robbed everybody there. So I'm glad that we chose this one instead of,
and too.
That was a definite different money energy, one we don't want.
It was. And it also had a creepy underneath the house situation. And
Situation, yeah.
well, yeah, the backyard toilet, that was special. And and also just the creepiness under the house. It was
Yeah.
I just this feels better.
I remember, you know, though, at the time, though, if I'm just 100% honest, we were so sick of the flooding situation because we got offered that one first. Well, he kept going on and on about like more proof, more this, more this. And we were like, okay, fine. You just want out of here so bad. We will take this house. And this was prior to me knowing that it was a gambling den. We were just like, it's a little small. There weren't any closets for everybody. There weren't enough. There was the bathroom situation. The bathroom situation was okay, but there's other things that were
tight squeeze.
The laundry wasn't good. It was out on the porch. Yes, there was so many things.
A closet on the porch.
But I was excited because I was like, oh my God, we got told yes on a house. I don't care like how we have to make it work. We need our own space. And then I remember right as we were like, okay, fine, we'll just settle for it. You told me, you text me, you're like, get in here. We got the other house.
Yeah.
Ran across the hall to your bedroom and you're like, we got this house. So I was like, oh my God. Yes. Please call 88 back and tell them no thank you.
Yeah, because we would have had to cram in to the other space. It would have been tight. The
kids hosted the things that we've already hosted here. There wouldn't have been enough room. I mean, like, it was crazy that was a gambling den because, like, because there was so little room, but they used every room as like a game room. They weren't using it as like a house situation. So. Yeah. Well, plus they had that weird van that said VIP on the back. I noticed in the photos. So they were shipping people. They were parking people at the local mall and then running them over on a VIP van to go gamble.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I like money, but I think I'm better off. Maybe we're all better off not being in that energy.
Absolutely. It's just. But yeah, that's another thing as a manifestation. It's like, you know, when you started walking your path and you were here, that's when the houses opened up, which is, like I said, I had been searching for probably a good 6 months prior to that. A long search.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to have one until I was here, apparently.
And I knew, remember we were saying, I was like, okay, we can make it work. Everybody will have to chip in more money until you get here. And it's like, that's another thing. That's another reason why the universe was just like, hold your horses. When she comes, then everything will just fall into place. And it did. It did. Beautifully. Just beautifully.
Yeah. Even the furniture, we were picking out to kind of fill this place. It was, you know, things that we thought we had ordered turned out to be a couple different colors, like the bench and the bar stools. But they matched perfectly. And we just rolled with it. We're like, okay, you wanted us to have this color for a reason. So
yes. And at the door, even though I was shocked when I was opening the packages and I was like, oh my God, they gave us the wrong one. But then when we got it in space, we're like, this is actually the better choice. It's like the universe knew. It's like, I know you said you wanted that, but this is what you're really going to love.
Yeah. And it's things like that all the time that have been happening. And so some of the things like the furniture are seemingly small, but we're just grateful for all of it because every little thing, the big things, the little things, they're all signs that we're in the right place, doing the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what flow feels like.
Yeah. It's nice to be in flow. I was getting really tired of fighting the flow.
I know. The thing is, we don't even realize we're doing it. We think we're being responsible and making plans and like thinking ahead and using our brains and, you know what I mean? It gets so, it just gets to be too much.
Yeah.
It's easier just to relax and flow.
And so being in the flow now and being in this place, I find it easier for people to go, well, what are we doing, you know, this summer or next winter or whatever? And I'm like, who knows? I mean, I know I'm a planner. I used to get out my calendar and like make it for the year. And now I'm like, we'll just have to see how it all shakes out. Like what's going to happen because we don't know what's going to be put in the path. Or I should go with it when it comes.
Exactly. And it's so, sometimes it's just so much more amazing than anything we could have imagined anyway.
Right.
So what's the point?
Yeah, I didn't even think to manifest a house like this for myself. I didn't even know it is what I would have wanted, but it's amazing. It's beautiful. The backyard, the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a really good update. I mean, can you believe? So it hasn't even been a year, honestly, since we started this whole journey. We were just talking about that. We just, even though our first podcast was Merry Christmas, You're Fired, we posted that in March. That's when we really began this journey of together of the podcast and bringing our spiritual work to the public. And here we are.
I know. In less than a year, I'm here. Yeah, because we first started talking about this when I visited last January. About this time last year, I was strictly on a visit just for a couple of weeks, just to see you after 4 years, and fell in love with it. I was like, I have to get back there. And now I'm really here. So I pinch myself every day, and I'm like, it's really real. You're here. You're together. I'm here by the ocean. The sky is gorgeous. Just everything. It's wonderful.
The beautiful views, and I know. So we're looking forward to like the next year unfolding and seeing and being in flow. And just imagine we did all that with starts and stops of being in flow, being out of flow, being in flow. Imagine what the next year is going to bring now that we've cleared so much, even with this gift. And this is the gift that I was talking about, even though we didn't want to be triggered on Christmas Eve. Like just that moment really allowed you to work through so much, and even me to work through so much, just so much, feeling of responsibility and burden. And we've talked about that and how I've alchemized, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, how I got rid of my headaches, and now,
and we haven't actually spoken about that because that occurred in November and we had not recorded our update. So do you want to talk about the healing you've experienced?
Yeah, so I was suffering for ever since I moved here. Oh gosh, about 3 months into my stay is when I thought that my sinuses were acting up, and I was living in a house that had smokers, and then I was blaming the smokers. Yeah, and so it's just, but I realized that it was just the stress, and it was like I came to a point in November where you had sent me something from RJ Spina, and it was talking about how, are you the master of your reality or not? And I was like, well, if I'm the master of my reality, then why do I have headaches? And then my higher self asked myself, why do you need to have headaches? And I thought, well, that's a dumb question. I don't need to have them. But then my higher self asked me again, what benefits you to have these headaches? And I was like, oh, because I was holding on to a bunch of resentment from people that did have the habit of smoking that I hadn't forgiven yet. And so then every time I saw a smoker or was around, it just was this constant trigger. So after I realized I am the master of my reality, I forgave myself for being triggered. I forgave the terrible smokers who caused me this pain. And then after that, it's like everything just healed. And now I can actually walk past people who are smoking, and I realize that it's not actually the smoke at all. It's just my resentment, my attachment to a bad habit, that I've been hurt by some people that had that habit. It's so weird to unravel all of that. And you were like, well, most people don't have that level of awareness, but But that's what introspective and meditation allows, is for you to go into that level of awareness, for you to unravel exactly why that thing is so triggering,
Right. Yeah, and I witnessed the physical change in you. I mean, I couldn't, of course, see your headaches or your sinuses, and I didn't witness nosebleeds, but just the way you held yourself and your general mood and attitude the next day after you did the realizing and releasing, I felt like I had old Lyra back, in a good way, because you were always in so much pain every day, all day long, with the headaches and the sinuses, that you weren't really your full self anymore. But
That's true.
And so it was amazing to me how quickly the healing happened. That quantum leap into healing, right?
Yes.
That you talk about.
It really was a quantum shift.
Mm-hmm.
It truly was. It was, and prior to that, you were trying to help me because we were doing neti pots and sinus rinses and saunas and salt therapy, and oh my god, you were trying to help me do everything to try
because I attack things from a physical level a lot of times first, because like a lot of people, I sometimes have trouble digging deeply enough to figure out what the root cause is of a thing like hip pain or some other thing going on in my body.
Yeah, and I think all those things are helpful, and you definitely should go to salt therapy and do sinus rinses and all that good stuff. But but it's funny that I think all of that was helpful, but it was literally just that going within that mental, those few questions that my higher self asked myself, those two, what sounded like silly questions. Why do you need headaches? Why does it benefit you to be sick? So I think that if we asked ourselves that, because sometimes it's attention, sometimes people hold on to illnesses and things because it garners them a certain amount of attention. Or it gives them, or they tie their personality to it. I'm the person who has eczema. I'm the person who, do you know what I mean? They don't know how to separate themselves from their illness long enough not to claim it. And I've recently written a book called Words Are Spells. And so that's another thing I want to say. We'll get into that later, but we don't ever want to really align ourselves with our traumas and say, I am this, I am depressed, I am sick, I am poor, whatever it is, because that's affirming. Because the I am, I think, is two of the most powerful words you will ever speak as a human being. So you have to only affirm what you want. Don't ever affirm things that you are looking to release.
So you want to say I am healthy and whole?
Yes.
Instead. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't wait until everyone can read your book, Words Are Spells.
I know. Me too.
I'm very excited because I edited it. So I read the whole thing and I love it. Yeah. And so we'll be releasing that soon.
Yeah, very good. Well, excellent update. Well, we hope you guys are doing well. We look forward to hearing any comments you have in our sections after you hear this. Feel free to reach out. We've got several ways to connect with us on our website and several offerings, and the book will be the new offering. So we look forward to hearing from you guys in the future as well.
All right. Until next time.
Bye.